All right, so welcome to the fourth Life with Pigs podcast. This is episode number 4, which I think I just said. But so today,
Oh yeah, he did. COVID special part 2.
yeah,
Ish.
I mean, so last time we filmed part 3, thinking like Mallory was done with COVID. She had tested negative, all seemed pretty well, and then within 24 hours, it just bounced back with a vengeance. And she has
COVID rebound.
She's been, under the weather, shall we say.
Yeah. My head is still a little foggy, so.
Yeah, but she's
Bear with
dedicated. She's dedicated to the podcast.
I'm just here to look pretty. Or sound pretty. I don't know if I can sound pretty. I think I'm still pretty scratchy, so I'm just here.
You sound
I'm
and
just
look
here.
pretty to me, so.
Thank you.
No matter what.
Aw, thank you, baby.
But, what was I gonna say? So we thought today we would do a less sort of jolly topic, not quite as fun.
Not jolly at all.
Not jolly at all. But we thought it's something important to talk to and like directly impacts people's lives and could be something that directly impacts your life severely in the near future. And that is the topic of bird flu. Like this is something that's been going on for a long time. This is not like new, but it's mostly been confined to birds in the past, which is never good that anyone's dealing with it. But it had mostly been like a migratory bird, like I think it's the geese mostly would carry it. And then after like the season of them traveling, it would kind of fade out and there would be sort of a down period. Well, thanks to animal agriculture, you have this virus that is getting stronger, becoming more resilient, and so there really isn't a season anymore, and there really isn't sort of a specific bird or even animal now that it's hitting. So we thought we would kind of touch on that topic today. It's been in the news a lot. I know you've got your Google alerts,
Yep.
So if you want to add anything there before we kind of go into specifics, you could.
Yeah, I mean, we could kind of talk about like what we're doing here. I mean, we're really just kind of keeping an eye on it, and it hasn't hit super close to us. Although it was at the Richmond Zoo, which was really kind of concerning, and there have been some recent cases in Virginia. So I'm keeping a close eye on it just to make sure. Luckily, we are not situated near a body of water, so migratory birds aren't really like coming in, like wild geese and things like that. Anyone who comes into the sanctuary has to do a foot bath and make sure that their shoes are clean, or wear a different pair of shoes here. We never wear the same pair of shoes out. Wash our hands. Just very careful that we're not bringing anything to our birds. So far, luckily, it's not really being spread by like the small little songbirds, so that's mostly what we have. We don't really have a lot of the larger birds like in our yard actively. So we're hoping that we're fairly secure. Although we did have some hawks, which is really scary. Totally unrelated to bird flu.
Yeah. Just
we
sorry,
did. Sorry. ADHD detour. Just remember the hawks. You did remember to keep them inside under the run today?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, good. Just checking. Sorry. I like to check. I'm like a nervous mother. It makes me feel better to ask over and over again. But yeah, we had some hawks flying around, so the chickens are having to stay in their covered outdoor area versus going out and about. So anyway, that's what we're doing right now with bird flu. But yeah, it's definitely scary because if our birds got it, it's basically a death sentence within, like 24 hours. So and now, of course, it can also spread to cows, although it's not, as deadly in cows, but still obviously not something that we want any of our babies to have to deal with. So, and then we don't need to get sick again on top of everything else. So, and there's like a pretty high death rate for people, right? I mean,
yeah, I've heard different things, but it's like, I think sometimes as high as like 50%, but it's sort of unclear. I think the testing is starting to get better because they're a little more worried about it because it seems to be happening more and more frequently. But yeah, and I think the hard thing to predict is once it hits humans in a form that's easily transmittable, like COVID did, where you take this virus and it suddenly spreads very easily in a variety of ways. Once that happens, what form it takes then is going to be key. And, it could be something that kills off a significant percentage of the population, which is like, sort of scary because, the people that should be looking out for us and making sure this doesn't happen have multiple objectives. I think, I'm not under the impression that the government doesn't care that a lot of people could die, but their primary motivating factor when it comes to almost everything is money, business.
Egg prices.
Yeah, egg prices. And so the more you scare people, the more you have to test, the more that, you put things in place to protect birds, the more it increases cost, and that hurts their chances of getting reelected. So in the end, you start to see a whole lot of focus on how to just mitigate the cost that it's causing people.
Right. Egg prices versus we're all going to die.
Yeah.
There's a looming serious health crisis on the horizon that could potentially wipe out everyone on the planet. But we don't want to pay as much for eggs. So how about you don't eat eggs? Just putting that out there. Anyway, sorry.
Good
sorry, I got a little worked up. Yeah.
It's okay. But yeah, so I think there is that conflict of interest, when you've got a government that's supposed to protect agriculture, just like historically, that's what they've done. They've kept prices down, they've funded it, they've supported it, and so now we're having this issue where they're kind of having to decide between what's the safest thing we can do to protect the population from this disease that could potentially wipe out, who knows how many people, or do we just focus on how do we best do that while really focusing on mitigating costs. And so, the sad thing I think is when you start looking into why it happens, there's the obvious one, how we raise birds that are used in animal agriculture, specifically chickens. These are animals that have I think it's pretty famously stated, they have the space of an iPad for their whole existence. And next to them is another bird that has the space of an iPad for their whole existence.
They may be cage free though, which means they still have that much space, except for they just don't have any protection from the other birds around them. So, in some cases it's even worse, but.
Yeah, you can have a cage free place and essentially the cage is the bird next to them because there's nowhere to go, but there's no iron in between them. But yeah, and so you raise animals in that way. You put them in a situation where that's the amount of space that they are given, and you're going to run into the problem of as soon as one gets this illness, it spreads to another.
Right.
And then, any kind of antibiotics that they're getting currently, because they live in these conditions where antibiotics are a must to keep them alive.
Because, well, it's viral too, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I keep going.
Yeah, so you're just creating all these situations where, bird flu, but in addition to that, all kinds of other diseases can be growing rampantly because it's bouncing from one animal to the next and mutating along the way. And so you are just you've created the perfect storm of circumstances for these diseases. And the most unhealthy birds. Yeah, and unhealthy birds. And then, usually a very marginalized population working on these farms, often undocumented, immigrants that are doing this work. And a lot of times... prisoners. Yeah, prisoners, people that are not going to have access to the best healthcare or are going to be scared to access healthcare when something's wrong or just can't afford to take off time work. And so they're going to get it and it's going to spread that way. And so you've got the situation where it's very easy for something to start as something we can control and blow up into something that is beyond, current methods of control. And so, it really is this horrible, horrible situation just sort of bubbling there, and it's really just going to take the tiniest of sparks for it to explode into a worldwide catastrophe. Yeah. And so, another thing that is interesting about it is, we've started to hear a lot in the news about how it's spreading to cows. And I think, the first question is, how are we spreading it to cows? Most farms have either cows or chickens. This is not small scale backyard farmers where they have chickens and they're near the cows.
Right.
It is a cow farm, and somehow it shows up there. And so when you start to dig into how is that happening, like why are cows getting a bird disease when the farms are separated, you quickly discover some pretty horrific things that are pretty common practices in the both dairy and the beef industry, where they take sort of the leftovers from chicken farms. They take the litter, like the chicken manure, they take ground up feathers and even chicken bodies, and they're feeding them to a herbivorous animal, someone who would never eat any kind of meat, and you're feeding it to them because it's cheap. It's cheap to grab all
literal
the refuse.
chicken poop. Like they're just feeding them chicken poop.
Like chicken poop, the bedding, like anything that's underneath, like at the end of it all, they can scoop up and they can just feed to them because it's like an easy way to get like cheap feed.
I feel sick.
And they can waste less in their minds, and so you end up with cows. I mean, this is similar to how you had the outbreak of
did they have to ban that in California? Sorry to be interrupting you. Like they actually had to ban feeding chicken poop.
Well, they had to ban actually like feeding them just like all random mammals. I was reading about how
cats and dogs.
Yeah,
They had to ban
cats and dogs.
feeding cows, dead cats and dogs.
Yeah, I mean, like, so, yeah, like, this is a pretty standard practice that's happening out there because, like, you may have heard the story of, like, the Skittle truck where they overturned a Skittle truck and it had the wrong S's on it. And they're like, well, where was this going? And it was going to a cattle farm to feed them, this candy that wasn't made correctly. And so this is what we're feeding cows. And, like, if you go back like to the 90s, there was the issue with mad cow disease, and it was like, how are these cows spreading mad cow disease? And it was because if a cow died, they would grind that cow up and like feed them back to the cows. So they were like feeding cows, and that was spreading mad cow disease. And so that's when like Oprah got sued for saying, I'll never eat a hamburger again, because that's how powerful the influence of the agricultural industry is over our government, that you basically can't say stuff like that. You can't say this is what's happening. And so
well, people think of like big pharma, but like I think don't realize that big ag is just as much of a presence, in everything.
Yeah, I mean, without the government's backing, a lot of these industries, like the dairy industry,
totally subsidized by the government. Yeah.
And so, so when something happens where they do have to kill all their birds because of bird flu, the government steps in and covers it. It's backed up by the government so they don't lose money, and then people just pick up the cost, but the farmers don't lose a thing. But yeah, so now we have bird flu doing this thing where now we're feeding cows this infected material, and cows are getting it, and so you're spreading what was something that was staying mostly avian, and it's spreading into mammals. And so you see like where recently they talked about be careful what you're feeding your cats because it's now spreading to cats.
Right.
And so you just have
birds.
All these places where it's starting to expand out.
Well, and you were mentioning too, we were talking about this before, like the dead piles that they have, right? So like at any kind of farm, you're going to have really big dead piles of either animals, that die early or are sick or that are just like left to die essentially. So there's always going to be dead piles. And so what's going to come to the dead piles that are out there? Vultures.
Yeah.
And vultures are a major carrier. First, they were just, potentially if they were eating like dead birds that were like, migratory birds or something, vultures are going to eat, whatever they find. They're scavengers.
Which is like pretty minimal.
Right. So but that's like pretty minimal, right? And so, but then you've got these potential, huge infestations of like all this dead bodies, and tons of vultures, food for tons of vultures that, are like, hey, here's dinner coming over, and getting this where, we know if one bird's got it, it's going to spread to everyone. We've got all the poop, just all the, everything from there. And then they're taking that, and they're spreading that around back out to the wild. So it's like this, this cycle of, it's not coming into animal ag and stopping. It's coming in and going back out, and now it's going into people, and it's like, this is how it's all, instead of kind of just coming and going, right? Because that's what it would have happened before, is that it comes and goes in the wild. Now it's getting to places where it's being, it's changing, it's developing, mutating, sort of looking for, sorry, yeah. COVID brain, mutating, all these things are happening where, but everyone's worried about the price of eggs, because, that's obviously the thing that's most concerning, right? And it's just that eggs don't cost too much,
Yeah, and like you're saying, you've got sort of a cycle where, so it started in the migratory, like, geese,
right,
who didn't really die as much from it. And so
yeah, there were different ones. There's like the I forget, my brain is just so fuzzy. There's the high I forgot, HPAI, or highly pathogenic. So there's some that it can, but they don't necessarily die from it. Some of them can get really sick and die, depending on like what version of the flu strain it is, right? Yeah. But not necessarily. They wouldn't all die, and some would get immunity, and it would just pass in and out, and seasonally, and go away. And so so it started out very much just kind of like a normal flu, like.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, so it's like spreading through them, but it's very rare that a vulture is going to be eating one of them that's died from it before they've like gone
right.
through it, because they're not dying as frequently. Whereas right. now the vultures have access to, the dead piles of all the chickens that
cows,
have died
yeah,
from it. Yeah,
or anyone else that might be infected with it.
And so it goes out into the wild now, and then that same thing comes back, because these same vultures are coming to this spot where it might be a dead pile that doesn't have it, but the farm workers are going out there, stepping in it, walking back inside with it. So you just have this circulation of these diseases where they're getting worse and worse over time. And that's what we're starting to see, is that like it is spreading to mammals. It is spreading, to different populations of birds that it wasn't hitting before, because it is building up this strength to resist, like which birds have a resistance, and then it's mutating and overcoming that, and then that's spreading much more. And so, you've just got this disaster where how we raise animals, is like obviously the biggest factor, keeping basically birds in this giant heap of like disease spreading capacity, and then feeding cows dead chickens and dead chicken parts and their poop, where all this virus is. It's eventually like starting to, seep into the mammal population, and it's only a matter of time where that infection could spread through the milk, could spread through, eating these animals, or just contact with raw meat and stuff like that. And so, it really is putting everyone at risk for the sake of some, like dietary choice that's unnecessary, that we know is bad for you. We know it's bad for the world, but everyone's going to potentially pay this huge price because, we're unwilling to sort of consider what the ultimate reality of these choices are. And so
we could just totally undermine big ag too. That's the thing, is like, if we don't buy it, they have no power. It doesn't matter how much lobbying, it doesn't matter how much government influence they have. If people stop buying animal products, it's done. Like the industry will die out, and then, we'll move on to other much better plant-based products and healthier, better for the environment, all these things, So it's like, they don't actually have they only have control as long as we keep giving them money.
Yeah.
So, for something that we don't need. It's not like, big pharma, people need their medications, right? So it's not like you could just say, well, I'm just going to stop, buying medications. It's like, but with this, we could just stop buying animal products, and they're dead. The industry is dead.
Yeah, and obviously contacting government officials and saying, I don't want my tax dollars to support this, because right now, no matter who you are, no matter what you pay, some of that money is going to support these industries. Some of your money is paying for farmers to scoop chicken poop and dead chicken bodies and grind it up and feed it to these completely vegan animals, the cow. And so it really is this disheartening disconnect of like what the government's doing with our money, and how ultimately it is biting us in the ass. We're on the verge of like major potential for disaster the way the world's connected now.
Well, and it's not, I mean, COVID, right, was human, right? It weren't really animals getting COVID, except for like very rare cases, but this is potentially, it's spreading into all these other mammals. So it potentially could wipe out so many humans, so many, so much of just the whole world. And I think people should be more afraid of that happening, and something that we could really directly impact stopping creating these pools for it to to come, and then these avenues for it to spread. Like, it would just do its thing and die out if we didn't help it along.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's there's two roads that could occur. One is this becomes a disaster, and we'll all know we should have seen this coming. We should have seen how easily this disaster was, to actually happen. And then there's the other one, which, is like preferable, where you're like, oh, it didn't happen, but that's only because we got lucky, not because of smart choices or, doing something to avoid it. Like, we're doing nothing to avoid it. We're walking into, essentially a trap, and just hoping that it doesn't close on us at the wrong time or in the wrong way. Like, we're not being, sort of actively resistant to this nightmare that could be on the horizon. I mean, we all hated being stuck at home or wearing masks or just dealing with COVID. It's no matter how cooperative you are with masks or whatever it is, or vaccines. No one wants to do it. No one's like excited to have these things happen, or to like be quarantined from your loved ones, or like have like your wife dying and you not be able to go in and be near them because it's so contagious. They can't allow that. Like, that just sounded horrible, by the way.
I know, I was like, oh, that's so sad. I just imagined myself like
I'd rather die with you than like have that happen.
You like jump in and be like, I'm infected.
Yeah, I got it.
Aww.
But
but someone's got to take care of the animals, though.
It's true.
Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, so like, it's just, this is what we could be dealing with for, even worse, sort of situations where we are quarantined, we are separated.
Well, and what's going to happen with the animals, sorry, I didn't mean to
interrupt
you, is that the response to it is when they find bird flu in any animal population, is that they kill all those animals. And so what's going to happen is, as this starts to spread, as it starts to get bigger, as soon as animals are found infected, they're going to be killing them and anyone around them, and rounding up. And I mean, right now it's, if you have a reported bird flu on your land, it will come and the state will literally kill every single bird on your property, whether or not there's any chance they've been exposed whatsoever. Whether or not the bird lives inside, if you've got an indoor bird, if you've got outdoor birds, like, they will come and they will kill everybody there. And so that's just going to keep, expanding and keep expanding and keep expanding. And that's how they deal with it, is just to kill the animals that are potentially, exposed to it. So it's going to, wreak havoc on, animals that are doing nothing to deserve this whatsoever. And they kill them in horrible ways. I know one of the ways that they do it is they take the foam from the fire for like a fire hose that they use. I think they use it for like chemical fires or something, and they suffocate them. They just pour foam on them and suffocate them. And that's the alternative to just shutting off the vents in hot weather, because that's considered too cruel, I guess, to die slowly of like heat stroke. So they just suffocate them with this foam, which really isn't better than the way that they die anyway. So it's just like, people are kind of horrified by that. But then I'm like, let me tell you how they really kill them, which we can briefly do, which is they string them up by their legs upside down and they dip them into an electric bath, which is hopefully going to stun them enough to not feel the blade that's going to come across that's supposed to cut their throat, that if they miss, or if their head lifted out of the water and they didn't get stunned, it could, slice them open. And then a good portion of them actually end up getting burned alive, and they know that because the bodies come out red in the end, and so those have to get tossed away, and that's not even a problem. So that's the way that they're going to die anyway, so it's not that much better, but all of it's horrific. And none of it has to happen, because you could just not pay for it. You could just not buy it. And I don't think the government has endless pockets to completely subsidize an industry that's making no money at all. So like it will force the government to come to a point where it's not worth it to subsidize this anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of times people will make the argument, well, the government's paying for it anyway, so they're going to make this amount, and so I can't really impact it by my behaviors. But in reality, the government is not going to subsidize something that is not benefiting, people.
Anything, yeah.
And so if you stop buying it, it will shift the way the government focuses their money. Like, they are not going to pay just to have this industry exist. Like, for a while they will, because the power
Right.
that they have, but when they start to lose money and there's no kickbacks for politicians, then it's going to change. And so it really is a powerful statement that you don't want the world to go down this path by simply not paying for the products that are leading us there. So
Yeah, egg replacers. Let's talk about, obviously people are freaking out about eggs, and so as the cook in the family, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, we didn't prep for this, but
No, that's fine.
what can we do instead of eggs?
I mean, there's so many things, like if it's something as simple as baking, there's like, you can use like the actual liquid in a can of chickpeas as a binder. That works really well. Like a lot of people have started moving to that for like, more complicated recipes. But you can also, basically just omit eggs in a lot of recipes, or you can add flaxseed. You just let it sit in water for a little bit and it gets sticky and it becomes like an egg replacer. There's so many options.
Applesauce?
Like you can, people can use applesauce, like it really is very replaceable in most recipes. The fact that they can make vegan baked goods and they taste just as good,
They really do.
like, is because it's not necessary. And then if you just like eating eggs, they do have the Just Egg products, and every day people are working on new ones. But like, right now you can go to Walmart or any grocery store and find, they both have the frozen ones that you just pop in the toaster oven, and you can make like egg sandwich with, that's like totally vegan. Or you can like buy, there's actually like the liquid, it's like, like the old liquid eggs that people would buy, so you don't have to like take them apart or whatever, like to make it simpler. But now it's just, you pour that, you can make an omelet. But like we use tofu, and you can use something called black salt. It's black salt, right?
Yeah.
And it has like the sulfur smell that eggs have.
It's really strong. Like, it
Yeah.
smells just like eggs. It tastes a lot like eggs. It's very bizarre how much the salt has that like sulfuric, but it's,
and then you
tastes
don't,
supposed to.
you're not, one, supporting a horrific industry. Two, you're getting a better protein source in the form of, like a plant-based one.
Yeah.
There's no cholesterol, like for a while, and I know they fought this over and over again, but eggs couldn't even legally be called like nutritious, like, or good for you. So they had to say the incredible edible egg, because it technically is edible. And so, like their promotion of eggs was based on if they could claim that it was healthy for you, because, they knew the cholesterol wasn't good.
It's a chicken, period. So
Yeah.
first of all, it's a chicken, period. Second of all, chickens only have one hole. So it's coming out of their butt. So you do not want to eat a chicken butt nugget. I'm just saying. Like,
Especially after you've seen a chicken wear a diaper and
they come out
their,
with poop on them. Eggs
all
come out
their
with poop on them.
Yeah, like it's pretty horrific to think that someone would want to put that in their
there's
mouth.
no way that is a clean,
Yeah, no, it's just, it's disturbing. But yeah, so, the sort of summation of all this is we are on sort of a precipice of disaster, and everything that we do right now is going to sort of make or break this. Like, it's still avoidable, but every day it's getting less and less avoidable. It's spreading more and more. There's more and more outbreaks that are like both going to people, to cows, to cats, to like ferrets, like to wild animal populations that should never have come into contact with this, and never would have been affected if it was, solely something that geese were passing in their migrations and not really spreading to too many other populations.
Yeah.
But we have created sort of this disaster to be made, and so hopefully we can unmake it, but it's going to take people opening their eyes and realizing that, we are the chemists with all the chemicals, and we're mixing them, and we just keep pouring the one that says bird flu into the mix and saying, hopefully this doesn't blow up in our faces. And so
I feel like we need one of the signs like only you can stop a pandemic. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's true.
Like a worldwide, global, all species potentially impacted. Like it's the precipice of total disaster.
It could be like a worldwide catastrophe. So hopefully that gives you a little more information.
You don't want to end up like the dinosaurs. I mean,
yeah, that's true. I mean, so do they still think that they were smashed by an asteroid?
I don't know, but something happened. We know something happened, but they all died out like around the same time. So
I do want to close by saying I really appreciate that you put on perfume, even though people can't smell you through the camera.
I like to smell good for podcasts.
It's always nice.
It's important to smell good for a podcast.
And you have a delightful smell that, like, hopefully just emanates out there. And people...
It just, it's like makes if you feel good, And then I thought about that as I was putting it on. I was like, I wonder if he's going to notice that I...
Oh, I did. That's what, like, in the hallway.
You're
it's
welcome.
Like,
You're welcome.
I'm going to have to address something that is going on right now, so...
Got it. Oh, we got curtains, too, if you're watching us on
curtains.
YouTube. That's exciting. So. But they're black on the other side.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Because Ryan's like, oh, but, like, we won't see them. And but anyone going by our house, I've not gone outside to look at it, but I feel like...
Yeah, we'll take a look.
It's so bright and pretty, and then it's just like... Who died? Like
it's like
it's like in mourning. They're in mourning.
It's light absorbing, so I don't know. I tried.
Anyway.
All right. Well, I love you, and we will see you next week.
Bye.